recording because I'm having a hard time sharing my screen.
Man.
What it is. Maybe it's my iPad. Anyway, people, we are here. We are the ladies keeping it real estate. And look, we got something super duper juicy today because today is August the 1st. And what is that, Miss Aisha?
Lots of form changes and guidelines when it comes to agency agreements, working with buyers, doing showings, some new things about permitting. August 1st is the day everything is going down from the settlement that has been going on for so long. Yeah. So I just logged in actually to the MLS, which is the multiple listing services. It's like the electronic inventory of houses, real estate for sale that we as real estate brokers, we put into the system, and then it spits out to Zillow, realtor.com, But one of the biggest things about today is because of the settlement, now the compensation that the buyer's agent is expected, to receive from their services is no longer allowed to be disclosed, meaning displayed inside of the MLS. So you may have seen on realtor.com, it says something like 3% buyer's agent. That can no longer be in the MLS at all, none whatsoever. So the question becomes, how do we know what the buyer's agent commission is before we take our client to go see this property? And then how do we secure that? So now there's two new contracts, more like forms. One between myself and the co-broker, which would be the listing agent if I'm the buyer's agent. And it's saying, hey, I'm telling you that this is the compensation that was agreed upon on our listing agreement. And pretty much we need to get that signed before we show each property.
Each? You mean it's wait, I'm sorry.
So let me say this. This is a CYA kind of guideline, okay? But to
a CYA?
Cover your ASS, okay?
Okay, let's say it. Let's put it out there because people need to know these things. Yes.
So, I mean, literally, if you can imagine, average buyer in this market right now, I do like maybe 10 to 15, maybe 5, depending on the client. And what they're looking for, but definitely with existing structures, not so much new construction. Usually that's already kind of set in stone, but for existing structures, and then the fact that they stay on the market for maybe 3 days, you're talking about the time and it takes to schedule the show, and also us getting in contact with the listing agent. At the time, we need to speak to them like, hey, I've got a client, I want to schedule a showing. What is the compensation? Then I send the form over to sign. Then we go look at the house. Plus, buyer agency agreement, another big one, which I actually like because in my services, I require it anyway. But the buyer agency agreement is a contract based on the relationship between the firm, the agent representing the buyer. And it basically says if it's exclusive, not exclusive, and so forth. That is the contract required for us as real estate brokers to be compensated for our services. And before the settlement, it was not required to have that form completed between real estate agent and buyer before doing showings, but now it is. Before we open the door, that has to be signed.
And so you're saying, so you're saying you were doing that anyway?
Oh, yeah, because for me, it's like, I don't do window shopping. We're not window shopping. We're not playing. Either you want to buy a house or not, if you have the money, you've got your money saved up, you got your mortgage approval ready or your cash, and we got our agency agreement. We've had a consultation to talk about how things work. Then that's the best way.
So long gone are the days where somebody's going to call up a realtor and say, I want to look at this house.
Yep, they can do
it. I'm bored eating Cheetos on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes,
I can buy a house, but hey, can you take me to look inside this house? That's not happening.
Nope.
No, that's not happening. But now, not all realtors have been doing it up to this point, correct?
No, they don't. And you do have some situations. Well, let's say you're working with an investor and, or a previous client, and you have that relationship. You don't feel like you need to lock in and pay in writing before you do it. Now it was always required to have that signed before submitting an offer, and getting it under contract, because then that guarantees it. But now it's required before showings. I really don't have a problem with that. I think it's great. I've already added to my buyer presentation that it is required. And in addition to the contract between myself and the listing agent, as far as the compensation, there's also another form for myself and the buyer to talk about the compensation and letting them know. They've added some verbiage to the offer to purchase contract, listing agreement, buyer agency agreement, clearly expressing that the seller is not legally required to pay buyer agency compensation. And if they don't, then it's the buyer's expense.
So now we've got, let me backtrack a little bit. Did I understand you to say that you have to have a form signed for each house they go see?
Yes.
Wow. Because so that's a lot. I understand, because it could be different. It's different listing agents and whatever. So that's a lot of paperwork, right?
It's a lot of extra steps just to get the showing scheduled, like to get certainty, to get the showing scheduled. And I mean, when you're talking about doing a home tour, you usually look at like 4 or 6 houses, and I sit there and I route them out and I schedule them out based on the time. But now, in addition, I've got to call every listing agent or text them or email, get some kind of response, and have them sign that form confirming the compensation, all of that. And hey, there's some listing agents that don't answer their phone and aren't.
That's where I was going with it, because I understand that can be an issue. Like, that's another layer.
But I do think it'll now require the listing agents to be on their game, because if you miss that sale, it's completely on you now. With the seller to now blame you. But I just want to reconfirm. So that new document is you saying to the seller's agent, hey, is your seller going to pay my commission and what my commission is going to be? And then if they say no, it's no, my seller's not going to pay, then you go back to your borrower like, hey,
I go back to my buyer like, hey,
your buyer and say,
they're not offering compensation. So if you really want this house, you're going to have to pay for it. And then let's say hypothetically, they'd be like, well, I ain't got nothing to do with that, and I'll just let the listing agent represent me. Then you're in dual agency, where you may not be getting your best interest acted upon.
So now question, I wonder, so here in Florida, dual agency, I think it's Florida, it might be Georgia, it's not allowed to be on both ends.
It's allowed here. It's just not, I mean, some situations it works out. Like, let's say seller already knows the buyer and they want to do an office exclusive. They don't even want to put it on a public MLS. You already got a buyer, you already got a seller, and you don't really need different representation because they both, are cool. It's allowed here, but the main thing is disclosure. That's the biggest law for us as real estate brokers, is we have to disclose what the agency relationship is, as well as compensation, and if there's any kind of bonus involved. So yeah, that's where it is. And there's also another one, and to be clear, this is for North Carolina, for everyone that's watching. This is for North Carolina. I am only licensed in North Carolina. I don't know anything about any other changes in other states. But there was another one. They added a very, very detailed property disclosure form for raw, like vacant land. I mean, it digs down into all the details, which I kind of think they should have already had. Talking about like what the sewage and water access is like, as far as like street, is it, landlocked? Has there been a survey? I mean, it gets very detailed.
Not doing that ahead of time in order to even market the land, to know all of that?
You're making a great point. And that's why you have a real estate license as well. Yes, a great agent already does that. Yeah, a great agent already does that, but there was no specific form or document required for it. Now that is required just like mineral oil gas rights. Same kind of form thing there. Also, there is now an opportunity for buyers to get their due diligence back.
Oh,
okay.
This is the juicy part.
Ooh. And
Okay.
this is and once again, is this a North Carolina thing or a North?
This is North Carolina governmental compliance section in the offer to purchase contract, all about permits. So long story short, let's say that so we're supposed to have a permit for a water heater. If the water heater is replaced, there's supposed to be a permit pull for that. You don't necessarily have to use a general contractor, but you should contact your city or county for the permitting. So let's say, in advertisement, all right, new water heater, and they go under contract, and then the seller never disclosed that, hey, there was no permit, it was just replaced. And then the buyer finds out maybe there's some issue. Well, since it's not permitted, if the seller's not willing to cure the violation of not having it permitted, then the buyer can walk away and get their due diligence and their earnest money back.
That's a good clause. Sorry, Lise. That seems like a really good reason, and the fact that they weren't even doing that in the first place. Why would I let you keep my money on something that you did not?
Well, see, the thing is, you got to think about massive flips. You got to think about, there's a lot of flippers out there that don't do permitting. They've got a team of people that can do it themselves, but you're supposed to have a permit for a lot of stuff. If you add a dishwasher, if you add a plumbing fixture, you're supposed to have a permit for that. If you move a light fixture, you're supposed to have a permit. A deck is supposed to have a permit. Now, usually if you're doing an HVAC, those people are licensed, they're pulling the permit, but
so this opportunity to get the money back is tied to permits.
To permits specifically. If they find out that something's not permitted and it wasn't disclosed that it wasn't permitted. Now, it's not like, I guess, so much illegal for it not to be permitted, but highly recommend. But if it's not disclosed that it's not permitted by the seller or listing agent, then that's where it goes.
Okay. So just a little bit of I want to summarize this a little bit. So we've got documents that need to be signed by. Now, does the buyer have to sign the document that you have to have the listing agent sign every time you go to see a different house? Does the buyer have to sign it?
Yes, there's one specifically for the co-broker and one specifically for the buyer.
For each house they want to see.
One address, one property line on.
So is it gonna say, okay, I go to the seller's agent first, we negotiate it out, then you go to your buyer, okay.
Well, it's not supposed to be a negotiation. To be clear, as a seller, when the house goes on the market, it's because there's a contract between the firm, the seller, and the listing agent saying, hey, we're marketing the property for this service. It costs the seller a certain percentage. Usually it was 6%, right? And then that 6% gets split between buyer seller side, right? So it should be based off what that contract says. In that listing agreement, it specifies the full listing service and how much the cooperating side is getting from it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a buyer. I say, Asia, I want to see house A, B, and C. Then you go to the listing agent for houses A, B, and C, and you get, does this document have a name?
This one, so the 220 is between agents. This is buyer agents. I can pull them up here.
Yeah.
And then there's a 770 between the agent, the buyer, I'm sorry.
So the buyer says, Asia, I want to see houses A, B, and C. You say, fine, sign this document for houses A, B, and C. And then you go to listing agent for A, and they sign a document. And you go to listing agent for B, and they sign a document. And you go to listing agent C, and you sign a document. They sign a document. It's correct.
Exactly.
So, professional opinion, in your experience, what does that do to timeline?
Well, this is how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the brighter side. To me, I was already doing agency agreement required before opening the door. When it comes to all these compensation agreements and narrowing it down, we are really minimizing window shopping. You know,
Right.
sometimes I'm a lot more lenient with buyers, especially first time home buyers,
Right.
especially ones with a tight budget, because it is kind of hard. But there's a lot of things we can see in the photos that it, you know, if you already know you don't like it, we don't need to go see it. Don't think it's gonna look different there. If this is not your thing on your list, we're not going. If you know the location doesn't work, we're not going. You know, it's some things that we know from the beginning that doesn't work if the floor plan doesn't work with your lifestyle. So it's kind of all about really narrowing that part down.
Okay,
Because
so you think it's going to it'll streamline. So here's another question. There's a lot of talk. We're going to find out maybe tomorrow what the Fed's going to do with interest rates, which could heat up the market, right? And cause a flurry of buyers to start entering the market. What do you think that does, like in a market where there's like this? Of course, we probably won't see the same rush we saw during COVID, but in a rush, you know, like really popping market situation, what does that look like on your end? Or if you're the seller's agent, what does that look like on your end? I'm a buyer. You know, what does that mean for me?
You know what? I had
think
thought
it's going to
about,
cause some type of like bottleneck?
I mean, I don't know. You know, one thing I had thought about is that if it really got crazy like that, as a listing agent, something I could do is offer a very long open house.
Mm.
So that way it's like, let's say the house is open from 10 to 7, Saturday and Sunday, where people have time to sporadically come in. And that way it's kind of already, I'm already disclosing what's going on, you know, in the email or whatever, because we can't put it in the MLS, right? But there's other ways that we do communicate it. So if we go ahead and host something where everybody gets a chance to come out, hey, that could make it a lot easier. Then we don't have to worry about
form at the door, like find a form on your way in, and
exactly.
So open houses may be back in a big way.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, that would be one way to really have some organization to it. The other thing is, as I've been mentioning this to buyers, because I have now had to add this to my consultations, a lot of buyers, they just say that, you know, if they're not paying, then I ain't going to see it. So, you know, as a seller, if you're not willing to offer compensation for the other side, your house is probably going to sit on the market more than it would if you were. You know, it's
and
not.
I want us to really amplify that.
Yes.
Sellers have the option to say, if they're not paying for my agent, I don't want to see the house. Correct?
Correct. And houses are sitting even longer now.
Yeah, the buyers don't if they don't want to see the house, then, you know, if they're not offering compensation. Now, there's never been no requirement that the seller pays.
No,
it's just been a standard. It's just been a norm,
right.
written norm that the seller pays. That's just what we got used to doing.
But I'm just saying, there's like this new redistribution or acknowledgement of power here. How bad do you want the house? How bad do you want to sell the house? Right? There's, you know, these are scenarios that it's introducing a new layer of like negotiation and strategy when you're talking about buying a house, and when you're talking about where the market is, as always, you know, if buyer's market, seller's market, here we go again with these new ways,
right.
These newly acknowledged ways to wield power, right?
Yes. That's a thing that they teach you when getting your real estate license. Buyer's market, seller's market, and kind of how that fluctuates. I do think in this area, it's definitely going to be a buyer's market because houses are sitting longer.
It is becoming it's becoming more neutral here. What
Florida,
my insights from Florida is a lot, is way more buyer, but here it's not because the home prices are so much lower to those.
Yep.
I'm trying to tell you, when I tell you literally, most of the people that I meet out at public at networking events at the bar, they're not from here and they moved here in the past 3 to 5 years. Yet I work with so many clients that are moving here. Like, we really are the place where everybody is coming to. So our market is not sitting as still as Florida or Arizona, like the places where it costs a lot more. You know,
what is the attraction right now?
Where the attraction, well, is a lot. It's a lot of
or
things.
The industry that is drawing people in. What's the big draw right now? Because I know Huntsville area in Alabama, you know, it's a lot of tech people are moving in because we have the Redstone Arsenal, and you know, we've got the FBI and all these other things and the aerospace industry. So what's the major industry that's drawing people in? And I'm just curious.
There's two. There's actually a huge Toyota plant they're building out in Liberty, which is Randolph County. It's supposed to be bringing in about 3,000 jobs or more. Then there also is the Boom Supersonic, which is an aviation project. They're building a very eco-friendly aircraft called the Overture. It's supposed to launch in like 2025, 6ish. And they are building some huge facilities out at the airport. With that's bringing a lot of expansion with the other aviation things going on. And that's bringing in about 2,000 jobs. And then also they're building 3 new schools in Greensboro. Boom Supersonic is in Greensboro, to be clear. There's a few things going on in Winston. High Point is just growing. Outside of just the business opportunities, the taxes here are very low compared to those high price states and cities.
And people are, what are the major states you're seeing a big influx from?
That you said, where they coming from? Maryland, New York, Arizona, Washington State, California, Texas, Florida, Vegas, wherever it's expensive. and they love the climate. A lot of people just say they've always wanted to be in North Carolina. They want to be in the Sun Belt. The climate is great. You have beach, mountains. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. The schools are pretty good. The crime rate's a little better. There's a ton of park and recreation. Like, the city really puts back into outdoor lifestyle and doing things around in the area. So it's just a place to be.
Living there. I will say,
I apologize. I sidebarred a whole lot there.
No, you're good. But that's
people
very
need to know
important.
that, people don't know. And I told you, aside from me living there for the 6 months, I've seen the drastic difference. I've been coming to Greensboro since I was 4. I told you that's like home, and not noticing it then, but looking back, like, this is completely different, especially with you mentioning things like the park and the school districts and the versatility of the whole state itself.
Right.
Having those different options. So, I mean,
and where we're like an hour from Raleigh and from Charlotte, right in the middle.
So people, if you hear that, if you are attracted to moving to North Carolina, you call Miss Burnett over here.
That's right.
And our other realtor, Felicia, she is attending a meeting that is actually digging in even more on this NAR stuff. So she's not with us today, but we do have Asia, who has done a wonderful job educating us. Any other points about this? Because I find this fascinating from a and I need to understand it as a lender, you know, what's going on into play there, because honestly, people need to tell us if they're going to be paying for buyers need to tell us that if they're going to be paying for their realtors services, because we automatically throw that on the seller's side. A lot of times, you know, when we're working on inputting the fees and everything. So I find this all super fascinating, and how it's rebalancing, or it's creating a new way of power being distributed when it comes to the buyer seller transaction. Is there anything else that buyers and sellers might want to know about about this? Because it's August 1st, people. We are here. This is the way it is.
So I do have one question though. What about the things that are already under like the clients you've already started working with?
Great point. So they did add some other little small things to offer purchase contract and disclosure forms, like floodplain and wetland is a lot more specific. It's more than just, is it a floodplain? Is there water sitting in the backyard kind of thing? What's the drainage like? Like, is there a little pond and things, like anything with water? So they added that. And are you working with a relocation company? Because in some situations, if it takes too long to sell, the relocation company may buy the seller out. So that has to be disclosed now too. Now, good point. So right now I have, let's see how many I've got. Let's take a look here. So right now I have 18 active buyer agency agreements, meaning that I have had a consultation with the buyer and they have signed a buyer agency agreement with me between now and the past year. Now that there's this new thing about disclosure and there's additional information on the new buyer agency agreement, we have been informed that either they need to sign and it's like an updated one saying, and it adds all the verbiage in there, or we could just go back through and re-sign and do the whole new thing. So basically what I'm doing is, you know, I stay in contact with the people I work with, you know, whether they're ready or
very amazing.
yeah. So I will go back and refresh it when they're like, all right, I'm ready to, you know, because sometimes when I meet with people, it's a process of working with buyers. I can meet with you today, but because of financial things and your lease might got to run up or your job offer, we may not actually go start looking for houses and you may not get approved till 3-6 months from now. So, you know, having an agency agreement kind of already locks it in. That's paperwork we don't have to worry about, and then we can just move forward. But so, yeah, great question.
Awesome. Awesome. Yep. Anything else? Anything else? I think we
same thing with listing agreements. If you have any active listings or anything like that, you also have to do an updated agency. It's fun.
Keeps it like interesting. Never boring. Never boring.
No.
Well, awesome. Well, wonderful. Yeah, if anybody found this helpful, please let us know in the comments. You got any questions? Let us know in the comments. We will hop in and answer for sure. If there's any topics you'd love for us to cover, we are really hungry to know what it is that we can touch upon to educate and empower you in the home buying mortgage loan process, as well as tools to help you build wealth in the real estate arena. So this is the Ladies Keeping It Real Estate, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right. Juicy.